Hello, I'm Chidam. Welcome to my podcast, Live Like a Scientist. This is a podcast about integrating scientific way of thinking into everyday life. Because science is not only a profession, it is a way of seeing the world, relationships, identities, politics, emotions. And in this podcast, I will talk about what that life really looks like. This is a very special welcome because this is the first episode of this series. This first episode will be a little bit different from the next ones. I started this podcast because I believe scientific papers, research concepts shouldn't stay behind paywalls. So many of them actually help explain our everyday lives, the decisions we make every day. My goal is to bring scientific findings into everyday conversations and show you how relevant they actually are. But this episode is more personal. It is coming out on the first anniversary of receiving my doctorate degree. So I want to talk about the journey that taught me how to think like a scientist in the first place. We'll talk about the highs and lows of my PhD experience. I think of this recording as a tribute to that journey because it was the most transformative experience I had. An experience that made me the first scientist in my bloodline. Actually, today's episode has been waiting for years. Every time during my PhD, when I felt lonely or overwhelmed or not understood, or simply after another long night of working, I told myself, once this is over, I'm going to talk about all of this. And I guess this is me finally doing that. I'm finally talking about it with full transparency. But it took me a whole year. I'm definitely not here to glorify academia or to say everyone should complete a PhD. Actually, some of the happiest and the most successful people I know are people who left their programs at some point. But today is to celebrate my experience. The same way we don't spend a wedding anniversary talking about every flaw in our relationship, today I want to focus a little bit more on the moments that made the whole thing meaningful. Again, both ups and downs, because they together made those several years of my life meaningful. Last year, right after graduating, I honestly didn't think I could have recorded this episode. I was still recovering mentally. And maybe this is the scientist in me, but I wanted some distance from the experience before talking about it. Reducing the researcher bias a little bit. Because when you are inside something for that long, it becomes hard to separate reality from survival mode. I now finally feel ready. And now when I think about it, maybe part of the hesitation came from the fact that this episode will eventually lead to the biggest question. The question I've been asked so many times. Would you do it again? Was it worth it? Don't worry, by the end of this episode, I will answer that question too. But before getting there, I want to go back in time. I want to go back to the memories, conversations, failures, and tiny moments that slowly shaped my answer to that question. One of the moments that stayed with me the most came from a conversation with one of the grad student mentees. I always valued mentorship, both professionally and personally. I think it changes everything, especially for first-gen and international scholars. That's why throughout grad school, I always tried to seek mentorship and give it whenever I could. In our department, incoming students were paired with mentors to help them to adjust graduate school culture. Every year I had a mentee. One time, one of my mentees was trying to decide on a research topic for an important project. And like many graduate students, she was mostly thinking about strategy. Like what would look good, what would fit her advisor's interests, what would be practical for the job market. I didn't realize at the moment, but apparently I asked her over and over again, what are you actually curious about? What genuinely interests you? What feels important to you? After our conversation, she texted me that night. She was saying, "Thank you for reminding me why I am doing this." My heart melted. Because in highly competitive jobs like ours, it becomes so easy to get consumed by logistics, survival, strategy, productivity. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely believe people should make smart decisions about what they commit their years of their life to. But I also think if curiosity completely disappears from the process, something important gets lost. So being able to remind that to somebody became one of the most meaningful moments of my experience, my PhD experience. Because a big part of the training is also to teach how to train and mentor. Or maybe it's not a big part of our training, but it is a big part of the job. So that moment made me feel like I'm doing something right. Another favorite moment was with my family. My dad and I were walking toward the airport gate after one of my visits back home to Istanbul. My sister was coming back to the US with me for the first time. She was going to stay for a while, and it was going to be her first time in America. And right before saying goodbye, my dad whispered something into my ear. He said, "I'm so happy my two daughters get to travel abroad together." And then he added something that changed the way I see myself. He said, "It is so common to see one family member ruin things for everybody. Thanks to you, we saw that a good family member brings good things into the lives of others." He was probably speaking from his own traumas, but I don't think I had ever thought about myself that way before that moment. I mostly carried guilt about being the one who moved far away. I always thought I'm bringing sad goodbyes to my family. He was saying, "No, you are bringing happiness." Okay, I have many more emotional moments to go through, so I need to keep it together a little bit more. And this whole thing doesn't follow chronology at all, but I also want to talk about something that happened during my dissertation defense. Yes. My partner was there that day, like he had been there for every other stage of the process, supporting me, listening to me panic, venting, celebrating my tiny wins that probably sounded ridiculous to other people. And honestly, one thing I kept thinking all those years, once this is all over, meaning once I finally got the degree, was how am I ever going to thank him? Like nothing felt enough. And then something happened after my defense that like organically did it for me better than I ever could do it myself. One of the professors who attended my defense walked up to my partner afterward and said, "Congratulations to you too, and thank you." Then she looked at him and said something like, "I knew Chidem when she first moved here all by herself, very motivated, very ambitious, a little bit scared. Thank you for not stealing her motivation. Thank you for not stealing her goals. Men usually ruin it. You didn't." I saw how happy my partner was. It is something when I say it, but it is even bigger when people who witness the entire journey also see his support. That professor knew ambitious women really only have two options: have a supportive partner or no partner at all. Another strangely emotional moment for me was actually losing an award at a conference to somebody from Harvard University. Which sounds dramatic now that I say it out loud, but I remember sitting there and suddenly thinking about this little girl who went to public school in Turkey and just loved reading books all the time. And I realized, doesn't matter the award, the conference, what happened, but I had already succeeded. I did it. Just by being in that room with the best people in my field. Whatever happened after that moment felt secondary. Around that same time, I came across the Maya Angelou quote, which I was thinking a lot around that time. I remember she's saying, "I am my ancestors' wildest dreams." I understood what she meant. Because sometimes achievement is not necessarily winning the prize. Sometimes the achievement is simply making it into spaces you once could not even imagine yourself entering. Your ancestors couldn't even dream about. And finally, one of the moments I will probably remember forever happened during my graduation ceremony. A faculty was sitting next to me, and he said suddenly, between the speeches we were listening to, he said, "What you did is incredibly hard." I turned my head and saw teary eyes. He kept repeating, "It was so hard. It must be so hard. And you did it. Don't ever allow anyone to make you feel otherwise." Yeah, I wish someone had taught me this earlier. Or maybe people were saying it. I just never allowed myself to fully believe that. What I was trying to do was hard. Maybe it's not hard for everybody, but for me it was hard. I think for years I minimized the experience because everybody around me was also doing difficult things. At some point, extraordinary effort starts feeling normal in those environments. But I'm glad I allowed myself to actually hear it in that moment. Right before I was hooded, I remember realizing it was hard and I did it. Yes, I didn't allow myself to think that way ever before. Maybe I thought if I do, I would stop trying. And you spend years pushing at the boundaries of human knowledge. You dedicate yourself to questions nobody fully knows the answer yet. You produce something that in some small way didn't exist before you. That's an extraordinary level of cognitive and emotional labor. And I think many academics become so used to that environment that they stop seeing how unusual it actually is. This is not only unique to academia, of course. I'm saying these things so you can think of whatever challenge you are having right now, or whatever thing you are experiencing for the first time in your family or in your environment. Yeah, whatever challenge, struggle you have, maybe this can resonate to you, to your experience a little bit too. And I'm sure there are many more moments I'm forgetting right now, but these are the ones that immediately come to my mind. Before I make this even longer, now, as a professional habit, I have to take myself down. We'll talk about the limitations. What were the worst moments? There were a lot of those too. One moment I felt terrible was during my first year. I remember, so vividly. It was a winter night. I was walking towards the Chinese food place in the park right across my office, and it felt like I didn't belong. I got not very good feedback from 2 of the 4 projects I was working on that year. I was already exhausted. I didn't know how I could do it better. Maybe I just didn't belong. Maybe this was it. What would I do if I go back to Turkey? What would I pursue it there? Would I pursue it there at a different school maybe? Would I miss this environment forever? After tasting it once, would I regret it later? Was I missing the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? Why did I think it was going to be easy once I got accepted into the program? I remember walking back to my apartment with headphones on. It was very dark at night. It was very cold. I thought it was the end. I didn't have what it takes to finish. Every time I go back to that street, I can still feel the wind against my face and I hear the thoughts that were running through my mind that night. Anyways, I was wrong. Honestly, when I think about these worst moments, most of them didn't come from academia itself. They had nothing to do with the job itself. I was happy doing my little research, playing with numbers, reading my books on my little desk. They came from people. Yeah, from people who judged the process without even understanding it. People who made me feel like I was pursuing something useless. People who reduced years of effort into comparisons. Sometimes people would say things like, "Oh, I know someone in X school who finished their PhD in 3 years. Why is yours taking so long?" Or they would talk as if I was simply extending student life without acknowledging that I was fully sustaining my own life, financially, logistically. And I was doing that without relying on anybody and in a foreign country. I was self-sufficient for that stage of my life. See, I get so frustrated every time I think about this. There is a special place in hell for those people. I'm joking. Maybe not really. Because those comments made me feel terrible during some of the most vulnerable moments of my life. And I will never forget who actually supported me and who made me feel not enough. Yeah, I have a list, my friends. I have a list. I also think many people fundamentally misunderstand the nature of a PhD itself, which is okay. It's a job. I don't know everyone else's jobs and what it entails. But that's why we do not judge. A PhD itself is not like a degree where if you study hard enough, pass the exams, complete the assignments, if you show up, you are automatically guaranteed the diploma at the end. Research doesn't work like that. A PhD requires producing something original, some level of innovation. Sometimes you work on a question for months and realize it leads nowhere. Sometimes your methodology fails. Sometimes your theory collapses halfway through. Sometimes global pandemic starts and your experiment gets cancelled. Sometimes the answer to your question is simply no. The world doesn't work the way I thought it did. And that is a very different experience from simply completing a curriculum. Because you are not only learning knowledge, you are trying to create it. And I think for years I minimized that before anyone else could minimize it for me. I would describe years of research as just school. I would downplay the difficulty before someone else questioned it. I would almost rush to humble myself first. But looking back now, the only regret I have, actually, I wish I had protected my own accomplishment more fiercely. Not in an arrogant way, it doesn't have to be that way, but just honestly, just like how it is. Maybe this podcast is in some way a letter to myself, or maybe even an apology to the version of me who silently struggled for years and still kept going, and to the version of me who achieved something difficult but didn't allow herself to fully celebrate it. Yeah. So this brings us to the $1 million question. Ta-da-da-dam! Would I do it all over again? It is a big yes in every lifetime. It is a yes that contains exhaustion, loneliness, growth, grief, ambition, immigration, love, identity, failure, resilience, and becoming. Maybe that is what the entire experience really was in the end for me. It was my becoming story. Not just earning a degree, but becoming a scientist. In the next episodes, we'll talk about behind all those long formulas, like hundreds of pages, what scientists say about the decisions we make every day, like what to eat, who to marry, how to vote. For now, I'll leave you with a quote I come across on social media. I shared it exactly a year ago from now, on the day of my hooding ceremony. I couldn't locate who the original author is, so please let me know if you know. It might be an unattributed internet quote or something, but it kept me going when I was about to give up. And I hope it helps you too, like for whatever struggle you are in right now. So it goes as follows. I'll read this one. It takes years, then happens all at once. Years of silence, years of darkness, years of running full throttle. Speed bleeding out of your soul on a road that never seems to end. You fail, you shrink, you do the best you can, but get nothing back. Until one day, one moment, one piece of work changes everything. The road ends, the silence ends, and you wake up on a roller coaster going straight towards the pinnacle. You get what you wanted, and the years of nothingness make everything so much greater. And your only regret is that you should have wanted so much more. I'll see you in the next episode. Until then, keep living close to science. See you.